It's now 2 minutes after 7. Welcome back to Morning Express. In case you're joining us now, welcome aboard. It's time for us to get into political point, but we'll start with a reminder of the question this morning. Do you think we still have a strong opposition to keep the government in check? Do you still think we have a strong opposition to keep government in check? There are some who even feel that not only do we not have a strong opposition, we have never had one that was strong enough. But there you go. That's the discussion we're going to have here this morning. And with me in studio, we have Professor Wajakoya and Barack Muluka to basically look at that. But with a muzzled civil society after a state crackdown in the run-up to the last general election and now an opposition in disarray following the Uhuru-Raila handshake, there has been concern that there is no one to check the executive. But is this the beginning of the end of the opposition in the country? Chris Thyro with that report.
To embrace. The truce between President Uhuru Kenyatta and opposition leader Raila Odinga may have cooled political temperatures in the country after a hotly contested presidential election last year.
The speakers!
But given that the executive enjoys majority support in parliament, the move has put on the spot the role of the opposition in keeping the government in check. And the vigor exhibited by opposition members before seems to have fizzled out.
It's very dangerous for a country to operate without opposition, because at the end of the day, who will oversight the government? And therefore, I feel like right now, we need to have a very strong opposition in parliament.
We want to see every member of parliament playing a role in terms of oversighting the executive. We want to see motions, we want to see bills coming to the House, we want to see members who are discussing these issues openly.
We are not joining Jubilee. We are distinct. We are working together as a country to bring the country together.
While the opposition has previously been credited with unearthing some of the biggest corruption scandals, there are fears that the government may have an upper hand, thus affecting the opposition's watchdog role.
When the opposition raised the red flag on certain corrupt individual, those of us who are in government, we used to defend and say, no, there's no corruption taking place. But now we have a unity in the war against corruption.
The war against corruption now is very serious, and I think the handshake is the reason why it is now being fought at a bigger level.
I think they agreed to bring this country together. And one way of bringing this country together is to appreciate each leader. The president is the president of the Republic of Kenya, and we now appreciate him, we recognize him, and we support him.
Kenya's undisputable opposition leader now appears to assume a new role with the blessings of the Jubilee government. Last week, the opposition leader held a meeting with South Sudan President Salva Kiir in South Sudan in what is touted to be his role as an African Union special envoy and an official representative of Kenya in the negotiations to end civil strife in the troubled country.
Raila's diplomatic capacity has been recognized internationally. This is not the first time that Raila is getting involved in mediation, especially in areas where there are conflicts. You remember even in Ivory Coast.
I'm not against the handshake. It's good for peace and development. But peace and development does not mean that you don't check the government. It means that everyone should perform his or her duties.
The other three NASA principals, Kalonzo Musyoka, Musalia Mudavadi and Moses Wetangula, seem to have retreated to the drawing board as they plot on their next political move. The three have been kept in the dark on the details of the agreement between the president and the opposition leader.
He called me Kimuntu Muguruki.
In the wake of the new working relationship between the president and the opposition leader Raila Odinga, the opposition seems to have lost its vigor in their role on oversight. Well, will this work for or against, especially in the fight against graft? The jury is out there. Chris Thyro, KTN News in Parliament.
All right, so gentlemen of the jury, let me start with you, Professor. You mentioned this earlier, almost preempting the conversation, but you mentioned that we don't have an opposition currently. Why do you think so?
We have not had an opposition from the time when Daniel Arap Moi stepped away from the public eye after the election. All the people we have, and I'm sorry, my brother here will roast me alive, but he should also take into it that I'm a leader of a political party in this country. So I'm speaking as an equal partner.
So even as a leader of a party, you have not been in the opposition. Have you been in government?
I am not in government. I have not intention of being in government.
I have.
But,
so are you you are not the opposition either?
I cannot manifest myself to be unless the people of this country decide to say so. But let me put it this way. The current mediocrity you have in the opposition is all related to finance and stealing and eating. If you look at these people, starting from those from my backyard, Western Province, and I'm not going to mention them because I respect my brother here.
And you're one of them from Western. Yes. Carry on, yes, carry on.
Of course, I've not looted anything from this government, neither have I ever held any position. You find out that these people are not serious. You find out that these people have no moral objectivity. You'll find out that these people are not opposition or focused on what opposition means. Theirs is, one, where do I get to stand in to be seen? The mediocrity of people's power, which ended with the communist regime. Number two, look at their lifestyle. Look at their lifestyle audit. You tell me, among these politicians, do you have anybody who can match the qualities of Kenneth Matiba, Martin Shukuku, Gachoka? No. Number three, if you look into their lifestyle again, all of them have been embroiled into corruption scandals. Starting with Wetangula, the Japanese embassy, going to Mudavadi with the burial grounds, local government, and when he was minister for local government. And if you look at their development records when they were ministers, let them show us what they did, other than. So I'm not saying that they are bad or they are good, but we don't have opposition. We have not had opposition since Mzee Moi left the scene.
All right, Barack Muluka, very harsh.
Of course, the good professor of law here knows that he speaks with the tongue in the cheek and that what he's saying is not true. Let us just go back even to the one-party days. That in 1964, 65, Jomo Kenyatta and Jaramogi Raila Odinga came together, Tom Mboya, Mwai Kibaki, and Charles Njonjo, and they decided that the country should have only one political party. They had a handshake with Ronald Gideon Ngala, and we had Kadu crossing the floor to join KANU. The opposition remained. In fact, Jaramogi Oginga Odinga, who had been named deputy or vice president without being elected, by Jomo Kenyatta, who also became president without being elected, started leading the people who are called the radicals in KANU. They were in one party, and we know that we can carry on with that history and look at the third parliament, 1974 to 1979, and which was the most assertive parliament that this country has had. Regardless that we talk about a multi-party dispensation or a single-party dispensation, they were the alternative voice. And the alternative voice will always be there. Let us stop equating Raila Odinga to the opposition. Raila Odinga has joined them. There's a saying that if you can't beat them, you join them. And look at the imagery that he uses. He uses the imagery of eating, the imagery of a stag, which he says he killed and somebody ran away with, and so he has joined him so that he can have his portion, his share of the stag. He talks in the imagery of bread, full loaves and half loaves. So we know why he has gone there. And Raila Odinga is not the opposition. As far as the alternative voice in this country goes, Raila Amolo Odinga is irrelevant. And we must remind ourselves of what Muhammad Ali told journalists at some point towards the end of the 70s, start of the 80s, that you guys who have been following me all over the place with your bags and cameras, trying to get big news to sell your newspapers, you will soon have to look elsewhere for somebody to run after and to follow. And the newspapers in this country, the press, the media, Imagine that without Raila Odinga on the front page in the prime news, that nobody will listen to them. And now you have seen fellows who are even fishing for stories, fishing for news, and trying to create news when there's none around the person of Raila Odinga, because he's gone, he's compromised completely. We must now look elsewhere for alternative voices, and those voices are there. We issue press releases, which nobody wants to give that frontage.
Front page.
We do press conferences. We talked recently about the capital gains tax and where it's taking this country. We talked about the new brackets of income tax that are coming. We talked about this graft. If you are fixated somewhere and you refuse to adjust your lenses, you will not see what is lying in the blind spot, in the blood spaces of your cameras.
Okay.
Yeah?
Professor, is it that you're so fixated on Raila as the opposition to a point where you followed and assumed that he is the opposition, and as a result, if it is true, like Barack says, he is compromised, then we don't have an opposition.
Irrelevant.
And to use his words, irrelevant in terms of the opposition. Is that the case?
Well, while I agree with some of the assertions made by my friend Muluka in totality, I will disagree with the word irrelevant. First of all, right now, at least the country is stabilizing and corruption is coming out as a result of that handshake, maybe. But Raila is not somebody you can just discuss or describe that way. This man's flesh has been eaten by bugs in police cells for a very long time, while some of us were enjoying either as university students or as whatever. And secondly, this man's bones have been broken many times. But it's that spirit in him that drives some common sense in some sectors of this country. It matters not where he is now, in my opinion. What matters to me is he trying to do something for the benefit of this country, even if he himself is corrupt, and we know that, with the molasses issues? That's number one. Number two, yes. Where do we draw the line? Yes, the opposition is dead, and Raila no longer talks about...
Am I dead?
The opposition is dead, yes.
Are you dead?
You have ANC
I'm not saying of him, but the opposition right now is irrelevant.
But you have a gentleman right next to you who is a member of the opposition.
No, he's a secretary general.
We are not dead.
He's a secretary general, but I'm talking of the real principles.
We are not dead.
Not Muluka.
And let me correct my good friend here.
Yeah.
Where you have been at some point becomes irrelevant. Where you are. When I see this person who is in front of me, that is the person that I'm seeing. And Professor Wajakoya is familiar with George Orwell, and he knows about the finishing scene in Animal Farm, where they say that the creatures standing outside the house looked through the window at what was going on in the house. They looked from man to pig, and from pig to man, and already it was becoming difficult to tell the difference. So it doesn't matter when the so-called liberators renege, they become renegades. And when you've become a renegade, yes, you have a rich history. We can talk about your rich history, but that is as far as it goes.
Let me put it this very clearly, and let me go straight out to the point. The handshake. Let's look at the coalition around the handshake. And let's look at now those ones who say they're opposition leaders running towards that handshake. Let's look at mediocrity from Kalonzo Musyoka. Let's look at Wetangula. What did he say today? He's now, and I'm not attacking Wetangula, he's my friend, but I'm just telling him as a brother. The days of mediocrity are gone. If you want to stand as a man or a lady, or as my friend who has been in the forefront of fighting, of which I am not really going to sample him, be there and call a spade a spade. You cannot come in and say, I'm opposed, and then tomorrow you are running towards that one. But however, there is no real opposition in this country, but time of reckoning is coming, and some people are laying down the foundation. I'm not going to mention who, We are laying down the foundation, and as we speak today, we are speaking with a one voice on the wrongs that are being done in this country. But as far as that parliament is concerned, and the leadership in that parliament, everybody is now singing in the same tumpuyad.
Let me come to you, Barack. And the fact that Raila has shook hands with Uhuru Kenyatta does not, with the example you've also used, does not necessarily mean that some of the principles and things that he was fighting for are buried. Or is that how you read it?
They are not buried in the sense that opposition is a spirit. It's not embodied and frozen in any one individual. Individuals may reinvent themselves. They may undergo metamorphosis that informs them that if I can't beat them, let me join them. But that does not kill the spirit of the opposition. The spirit of the opposition is there, and it continues to find alternative platforms. But when I speak here, for example, about the things I've said, I don't write psalms or sing psalms and canticles for government. You must listen to that voice. You must ask yourself, what is this voice saying? When we had the one-party dispensation, J.M. Karaoke continued to resonate from a different platform. Martin Chikuku, Jean-Marie Serone, Chief Gitonga, Yusuf Ali, Kasim Mwamzandi, they spoke from a different platform.
Yes, and you do
and
very
those
well.
Voices must be listened
that is true, and you do very well to quote those voices, and that's why maybe people keep going back to Raila, because that is the current voice that we have or had.
No,
so the question then is, which voice is there to carry that spirit of the opposition? Because you'll agree with me that as much as the opposition is not a person, it's a spirit, there is the carrier, there is the champion, there is the leader, there is the voice that speaks that carries that spirit.
Have I not been speaking opposition? Have you not heard me? Did you not introduce me as Secretary General of ANC?
All right,
I have a party and a party leader. Have we not been addressing these issues? Sometimes we behave in this country, particularly within the media, and I speak as a journalist, Michael Gitonga. You know I'm a journalist.
Yes, I do.
Trained, examined, qualified, empowered to work as a journalist, and which I still do. But we behave sometimes in this fraternity like chicken that has been covered under a basket, and even when that basket is removed, we do not realize that it has removed, that the ground has shifted. We need someone to kick us very hard. Then we start flying and we recognize that things have changed. Shame on the newspaper, which still writes opposition leader Raila Odinga. He has joined them.
But he's still
an
the
apologist.
Leader of Orange Democratic Party.
Orange Democratic Party has been subsumed into the Jubilee fraternity. When you hear people like John Mbadi speaking, they don't even know which end of the mouth they are speaking from. I'd like you to invite Mbadi here in the morning and to bring me here to talk to him so that we understand from which end of the mouth he speaks. These are stooges. These are marionettes, fellows who wake up in the morning and because their leader has done a handshake, they say, yes, our leader has done a handshake. If tomorrow he says we are getting out of the handshake, they say, yes, we are getting out of the handshake. Now, you cannot call that leadership. You cannot call it the opposition. Those are fellows who, Professor Wajakoya, I repeat, have become irrelevant as alternative voices.
Professor, what is it that you'd have the opposition do right now for you to be convinced that it's a strong opposition? Barack has rightly quoted and said they're speaking, they're making statements, they're out there keeping the government in check, but you say that there is no opposition. So what is it that you'd have them do? Is it because maybe the dancing on platforms has reduced with the campaigns?
First of all, even if you have a vibrant opposition, what are they going to do? Right now, if you look at the reports that we are privy to on corruption, all these mediocres are in. Everybody, even those that are outside parliament, speaking of the language of principle, they're all thieves.
I'm
you have either stolen before.
I'm not a thief.
Not you, because you are not a principal.
But he is a member of the opposition.
I am a leader.
And a leader in the
I'm a
opposition.
very, I'm a very,
I'm talking
I'm
of
a
the
very key
principles.
leader, a very key leader in the opposition.
Yes, I would like you to. I would like to see him being elected.
And watch this space.
Yes, I would like you to go back to the electorate if you have not gone before and stand and let the people elect you. Then we shall actually categorize you in that form.
Then the problem
as
are the people in that case, and I've said shame on the electorate.
I agree with you on that one.
That gives us Babayao.
Yes, and
all
that
right.
one is true. But anyway,
yeah, finish the.
When we look at Raila, we cannot just holistically call him irrelevant. Raila joined Kibaki, he joined Moi, and you saw what happened.
Sorry, but away from Raila, what is it that you'd have the opposition do for somebody, let's say, for argument's sake, to occupy that space that Raila had if he still doesn't have that space as opposition leader?
While must we follow what Raila does or what he says?
So what would you have the opposition do? Barack is right here. What is it that you'd have him do for you to feel that there's a strong opposition?
The word opposition is nominal to whoever, to a person's mouth, wherever it's coming out from.
No, it's not.
Now, let me finish, because you have interjected a lot, and I've been respecting you, but let me not respect you by saying something.
Let me respect you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. The definition of the word opposition depends on the maker of the statement. We have people who are in the opposition who see the way things are going and they don't like it. That woman who is selling vegetables, when she sees that her leaders are stealing from her, she's already in the opposition. Now, if we categorize the wavelength and the tiers of opposition, yes, Kenyans are used to seeing political leaders in the opposition, but me, I'm looking at those people who are suffering in the streets and who say the government is doing wrong as being in the opposition. But having said so, must we be tailor-made to be following some of these hooligans who purport to be speaking on behalf of the people, yet they are stealing from the people, yet there is no tangible evidence to show for all that time that they were in parliament, for whatever they did during that particular time, other than scandals? Is that what you want to say, to call opposition? At least Raila has come up, Raila has stood firm. Even if you have shaken the hand of Uhuru Kenyatta, we cannot holistically rule him out as irrelevant. He's still very relevant in this country. Yeah. Now, whether he's eating from the same plate with Uhuru, but look at the changes that are coming out right now. Let us call a spade, and let us see what is happening. Opposition is there, but the current one we have is a dead opposition without foundation or without frontiers. In which case, I will agree to stand here, to go out there to ask Kenyans in Uhuru Park and have a debate with him in front of 1,000 Kenyans, and we shall see who will swear the masses.
We are having a debate right now in front of more than 1,000 Kenyans. Of course,
you can ask for the viewers to vote on this, but I'm not opposed to my brother. I respect him as a writer, as a poetry guy, as a man who speaks very fine English.
As an opposition leader?
And as an opposition in his own right, I would respect that.
Okay.
But coming to the current issue, you'll find out some people who have run for presidential election, they form a cabinet. They say we are opposition leader. Is that right? But is that relevant? And I'm talking of Dr. Ukuru Okot.
All right, we'll soon need to wind up. Barack Muluka, he still maintains that the opposition is dead despite the fact that you're here. What is it that the opposition is doing, or rather, what answer do you have to him to convince him that it is still alive?
You know, Professor Wajokoya was walking on the right path. In fact, he makes very correct, valid, and heavy statements. But then when he's concluding, I don't know what happens. Yeah? Because when he says the opposition is a spirit, the opposition is a position that is different from the official state position. He's telling us something that is very valid. That do we have people in this country who are not quite convinced, regardless that they are not in the mainstream of the nation's politics? If we have such people, then we have an alternative platform. Then those people already start constituting an opposition. Do we have alternative voices articulating some of these thoughts, regardless that they may be like the biblical voice of John the Baptist, the solitary voice crying out in the wilderness, that they may be like Stockman in Henrik Ibsen's An Enemy of the people, and that you are the solitary voice. It doesn't matter that you are just one. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that the true strength of character is not in being in the crowd and being with the crowd. It's not in being in solitude alone. It is standing alone in the crowd and enjoying the joy and sweetness of aloneness in the crowd. So it doesn't matter that there will be only one Bone Khalware who has been talking about these things, that there's Muluka alone who is talking about these things, or that there's Wetangula who is talking about these things. We constitute an opposition, and a formidable one. It is up to our country to listen to us. And if it doesn't want to listen, to continue following the mess on the road. So once again, Raila Odinga has done a good job in the past, but we must recognize where he is now and what he's doing there. The things that we are seeing today, the eruptions, the unfolding things, they have nothing to do with him.
All right. Professor Ajakoya, your wrapping thoughts and possibly, as it were, advice to the opposition.
Before we go into that, I would like, first of all, to take this opportunity and to thank the Director of Criminal Investigation for having assigned me a special task on the issues of rebuilding a forensic laboratory in collaboration with the KEMRI and German. The Director of Criminal Investigation has gone a step further, and I'm speaking with authority, to actually bring in some kind of reform that is going to nab criminals, especially with the collection, preservation, and a reduction of evidence in court with the new facilities that are incoming. But I will speak about that in the next time. And I'd also like to thank the DPP, Director of Public Prosecution, for having actually been the first to call in the slouts from CID to investigate him. But coming to the conclusion of what you're saying, yes, some of the 70% of what my brother has said are concurrently correct. I concur with him, and that's why I like being with him on TV, because he's a man of common reason, and he's one who can actually tolerate others. Some people will start fighting on the bench because of what have you. And I would also like to thank him for his non-partisan approach in that constructive discussion and speaking the truth all the time is the way forward. The opposition is there, but it's not strong enough. We don't have a vibrant opposition. But as things are moving on today, sooner or later we shall see what direction Kenyans will be taking. We are in the forefront of speaking some of the few things we speak here, and we thank the press for giving us this opportunity, because if you didn't give us this opportunity, then how would we be heard? That's number two. Number three, Kenyans should look forward and fight this monster that is oncoming. Like, a lot of things Kenyans are eating are counterfeit. And I'm also thankful to the Director of Criminal Investigation for having broken the counterfeit ring, which involves very big politicians, and you'll see them soon being arraigned in court. And 41 stores in this country, 41 stores, are actually selling contraband goods. We've had Brazilian sugar imported, which is actually not Brazilian, but stuff mixed. And Kenyans will soon be dying of stuff substance, and unless this is arrested the way the CID is working, then we are doomed. Besides the opposition, we have a bigger problem than discussing the opposition.
All right, and I guess those are probably effects of corruption when we talk about contraband and all that. But let me come to you, Barack Muluka, your wrapping thoughts, and maybe what the opposition has to offer Kenya.
Vigilance. Vigilance. Everlasting, constant vigilance. Kenyans must remain eternally vigilant. They must demand higher standards of their government, the highest possible standards, and particularly of the persons at the very top. We must never get tired of criticizing them, of railroading them back to the straight and narrow. And I'm happy that my brother here, seems to be having a new role, a new dispensation. I wish him very well. We will be watching, and where he is living below our expectations, office square, we will tell him with the candor that it deserves. And for President Kenyatta, well, kudos, you're trying, but we don't pay you to try. We don't even try to pay you, we pay you. And therefore, you must deliver, you must raise the bar, and we must see the results.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. We'll have to wind it up right there. That's Barack Muluka, Secretary General for ANC, and Professor Ajakoya, immigration lawyer. Thank you for joining us this morning. And that's the political point. It's now 28 minutes to 8, and we're going to take a short break, but do stay with us. We have more lined up for you right here on Morning Express.